This is the third video out of 3 where we're talking about cognitive dissonance. And more generally, we're talking about how humans deal with information and behaviors that are not internally consistent. They conflict with each other. Now, in marketing, there are a few ways that cognitive dissonance enters the picture. And one is when a brand or product is advertised in a way that's not consistent with our notion of that product. So, for example, there was a time when smoking was advertised as healthy, even after there were studies that were suggesting that smoking led to cancer. So when you encounter this information that smoking is supposedly healthy, then you have dissonance, and that can eliminate the effectiveness of that particular ad. Another example of cognitive dissonance can be if your favorite sports star or musical artist or actor or politician is involved in a scandal, or if they demonstrate beliefs that aren't consistent with your own beliefs. So a famous example of that is with the Dixie Chicks, where they went on about George Bush at one of their concerts. Now, this conflicted with the political beliefs of many of the people in her audience. And in general, when you're a fan of a group or a politician or a celebrity, you want to believe that that celebrity is a good person. Therefore, you want to believe that they believe similar things that you believe, because you yourself believe you're a good person. So when the fans were confronted with the notion that the Dixie Chicks had a political belief that was not consistent with theirs, they had to resolve that dissonance. And in general, they resolved this by changing their behavior, which was they were less of a Dixie Chicks fan. They lost a lot of fans in the process. Another example of cognitive dissonance can come about if a company brands themselves in a certain way and then is inconsistent with that branding. So if they suggest that they're environmentally aware, and then we find out that they may not have acted ethically, or that they harmed the environment or harmed animals in the production of their products, then that's inconsistent with how they had branded themselves and how we psychologically think of that company. And so we face cognitive dissonance. In many cases, this can turn people off of the company. And this aligns a lot with the notion of authenticity, because when a company's behavior aligns with their beliefs, then there's not much dissonance. But if their behavior is not aligned with their beliefs, then there's a cognitive dissonance among the people that are following that company, and they're inauthentic. So I'll post a video where I talked about authenticity if you want to learn more. But one example that we talked about in that series is about a KFC franchise that wanted to raise donations for diabetes by selling large sodas. This is a clear case of cognitive dissonance among the people who are interested in diabetes. If they're interested in diabetes, then they're motivated to contribute to the donations, but they're going to perceive dissonance when they have to donate by buying a large sugary soda, which is unhealthy in terms of contributing to diabetes. So cognitive dissonance is created, and they're going to have to change their behavior, and most likely they're going to change their behavior to deal with that dissonance by not buying these large sugary sodas and not contributing to that campaign. Now at Intermark Group, we leveraged cognitive dissonance in one of our campaigns for Physicians Mutual. And our unique insight is that people generally view themselves as responsible. And so when they are confronted with information that suggests they're not very responsible, then they perceive dissonance. Now, when individuals have to think about saving for retirement and investing, this often triggers anxiety because they might not have saved as much as they thought they were supposed to. And so they're going to feel some dissonance in the fact that perhaps they're not as responsible as they thought. And so removing that dissonance can lead to changes in action and getting them on to saving for retirement, basically exposing themselves to that vulnerability and getting on board and starting to save. So what we did is we embraced this notion of vulnerability. Instead of trying to hide it, we just confronted it in the commercial by depicting a participant in public in his underwear. And it's basically saying that everybody feels this vulnerability. And so now your own internal belief about yourself conflicting with this behavior of going out and saving for retirement is reduced because you see yourself like everybody else. You realize that actually there's not as much of a dissonance between you and going out and trying to confront being responsible and saving for retirement as you initially thought, because actually it's pretty common for people to feel anxiety about this process. So the advertisement helped eliminate this dread of trying to avoid uncertain retirement future, and it did so by humorously depicting others who also experience that same tension. It helps reduce that dissonance, and it gets people to take action. So closing this out, I just want to talk about a few ways that a new piece of information can change our psychology, because these are really interesting ways. And one is through the boomerang effect. What happens is that when you do something and then you're attacked for your belief, sometimes that will often cement that belief. Sometimes we'll believe that belief even more. And so this is something to be very aware of in the context of cognitive dissonance. If you make people aware of the inconsistency of their beliefs, you need to do it in a way that is not going to make them double down on their incorrect belief. You need to be considerate of that. And I'll put a link to the video that we did of the boomerang effect if you want to learn more about that. And the notion of cognitive dissonance can also be used for affecting behavior. For example, if you want to quit smoking, you can tell everybody that you're going to quit smoking. And in order to eliminate the dissonance of telling everybody that you're going to quit but continuing to smoke, you will be motivated to change your behavior to eliminate that dissonance. And so that will motivate you to quit smoking. Another interesting example that's related is that it's more effective in the long run to get your kids to get good grades by having them want to get good grades than for paying them to try to get good grades. And the reason is that if you pay them to get good grades, then they don't need to have an internal motivation for why they should want to get good grades. So they're never going to build up the psychology to continue getting good grades unless you keep paying them. And the reason why is that they can justify that they got good grades because they got paid. So there's no cognitive dissonance. If you don't pay them, however, then they have to rationalize why they got good grades, and psychologically they could do that by telling themselves that they like getting good grades and they want to get good grades. So they develop this healthy internal perspective that they can carry with them to get good grades in the future without having the parents have to pull out their wallet for every report card. So this is the third in the three-part series where we're talking about the inconsistency of human behavior and how we hold these conflicting beliefs and behaviors and how we deal with those conflicts. And generally this is called cognitive dissonance. So thanks for checking out this series. You could hit the subscribe and the bell if you'd like to see more about what we're posting. And hit the like if you like this, and feel free to share this on social media if you'd like to share. Thanks for checking this out.